Welcome and thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for joining our Virginia Partners in Prayer and Prevention Partner Resource webinar series. We're going to go ahead and get started, but please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. We would love to know where you're joining us from. I'm just going to go over some housekeeping. So this meeting is going to be recorded. These calls are recorded. Every single time, you can always register, even if you miss a meeting, we will send you the follow-up recording. In the follow-up email during the presentation line, participant lines are going to be muted, but please feel free to use the chat box, and I'm sure we will have time to ask questions out loud. And if you need closed captioning, there is a button available to you through Zoom. If you need help or assistance in locating that, you can just message me in the chat and I will be glad to help you. And for tonight's agenda, all right, so I am Jasmine Martinez and I am with the Office of Health Equity at the Virginia Department of Health. And I'm so grateful for y'all to be joining us tonight. We have these calls every third Thursday of the month, so please continue to join us. If this isn't your first time here, thank you for coming back. And tonight, I'm so grateful to have Miss Amy Woods join us from the Michelle Peterson Foundation. And she's going to be sharing some tools and resources in supporting mental health. And I'm super excited to share not only with others, but also some information for ourselves. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Miss Amy Woods. And thank you again so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be on the call tonight. I am really delighted to have the opportunity to be with you again and to share with you some mental health tips. So Jasmine and I talked a little bit about sharing a little bit about suicide prevention and then some about holiday tips to help with burnout and mental health during the holiday, because we know that as much as we are all looking forward to the holidays, sometimes it can be a very stressful time. So please, as Jasmine said, please put questions in the chat as we go along. Jasmine, feel free to shout those out when they're come along so that we don't have to wait till the end. But there will be some time at the end if you want to ask other questions. I'm happy to field them. So again, let's get started. So I'm Amy Woods. I'm with the Sarah Michelle Peterson Foundation. We are a local nonprofit here in Hampton Roads. We're housed in Norfolk, but we do service a large area. Our mission is education around mental health and suicide prevention. So we go out to any place and every place, both online and in person, and provide education around mental health and suicide prevention. The foundation has been in existence for 11 years since the tragedy of a young person by the name of Sarah died by suicide back in 2014. She was a ninth grader at Maury High School. I have been part of the organization for about 8 years, and my background is in teaching. So hopefully tonight you'll have a few new tips and tricks maybe to share with those around you. And certainly maybe you'll have a different lens from which to look at some of the things that you might hear, see, or know about friends and family, and how to ask some good questions to keep everyone safe all year round, not just in the holidays. Here's that information that I mentioned about our foundation. Feel free to look us up online at worldwithoutsuicide.org. So first of all, we're going to just start with some basics. What is mental health? Well, believe it or not, we probably can all kind of fumble around and get some put out some words to give us an idea of mental health. But basically, it is how we deal with the daily stressors of life and how we manage the things that life throws at us. Sometimes we do really well, and sometimes we don't do so well. When we fall into a place where we are in a constant not doing so well, managing the stressors that come to us, that's when we could say that we fall into some mental illness, often not diagnosed, but definitely struggling with our mental health being in a negative place. Mental illness, as we know, has a law. There's many things. Here's a non-exhaustive list, right? There's just a few things. I mentioned the first couple because depression and anxiety seem to be the two top that we often hear about, especially during the holidays. We all can have those anxious moments when we're having to interact with those family members that maybe we haven't seen in a long time, or maybe we know always have a backhanded comment to give to us, or something that can maybe not be as friendly as we are used to. So depression and anxiety can certainly ramp up during the holiday season, but it is definitely in the top of those mental illnesses that we tend to that we hear about. But I also like to bring this up because I want everyone to realize that mental illness in and of itself is a large spectrum, and every single one of these is mild to severe. It's on a spectrum, and those who suffer from mental health illnesses may have moments of severe and then spend the rest of the time being a very mild, right? So just so that you know that it is not a competition, quote unquote. None of these are worse than another. I know growing up, some of these we would whisper because they seem to be the worst then, but they're all kind of on a spectrum, and there's no competition. But they all have treatments we can help people get to support so that they can manage these illnesses, just like they manage their physical illness. Here are some things about depression as we talk about it kind of being the more talked about, or the one we see more during the holidays. Oops, let me go back here. It is a common mood disorder. It does deal with our thoughts, our feelings, and our moods. There is no one reason someone has depression, and it can be genetic. They can be predisposed to it, just like any other disease, if it runs in the family. So that's just, but it doesn't mean they have to. Just again, like any other illness, we need to start thinking about mental health as the same as physical health. And I bring up this next slide to kind of give that correlation. Our physical health, we have no problems talking about it. I know in our household in the holidays, when I go to meet some of my older relatives, they're having that competition about whose knee hurts worse or whose foot is, all of those kind of physical things. They're all talking about them, right? They have no problems telling us all about what aches and pains they have. But when we are relating mental health, we don't often talk about it. We keep it a big secret, and we need to get better with that because it's the same as any other illness. We all need to have we need to be able to feel like we can get treatment for that, that we can go to the doctor. If we had something wrong with our arm or our leg, we'd go to the doctor. Same goes for our brain. And so I show this scan to show you that there's the definite correlation between our physical health and our mental health. And at the holidays, we can get ourselves physically run down. So therefore, our mental health can also get into a place where it's run down because we need them to work together. We're not getting outside as much. We're not maybe drinking enough water. We're not getting any exercise. We're eating too many of those wonderful treats, right? All of those physical things can affect our mental health as well. And as you can see with this simple PET scan, that a brain that gets into a place where it is feeling depressed has less activity. And it's often difficult for a person who gets into a place where they're feeling low energy, whether they feel like they're depressed or not, it's difficult for them to get themselves back up again. And I mention this because we all need help, right? And sometimes we don't know we need help. So we have to pay attention to those around us. I'm going to bring up some symptoms here in a minute. So let's talk about those mental health manifested physically. Again, oftentimes when we see or hear about physical ailments, we immediately go to physical. My stomach aches, I've got a headache, things like that. It could be stress. We know that, right? We just don't always admit it that stress shows up physically. When we're tired and things are going, and during the holidays, we feel like there's a million things we have to do. It can show up physically. And we don't think about it being stress. We think about it being, oh, I've got the stomach bug, or I've got a head cold, or sinus, again, going back to those physical things. So just to keep that in mind, that maybe when some of these symptoms show up, you just need to take a break and take a rest. And I can be as guilty as anyone else of wanting to do the thousands of things that are available to us during the holiday, and we only have about 45 days to do them in, right? Or at least we feel that way. Okay, so let's take a look at jumping from mental illness. I know I'm jumping to suicide prevention, but I want to do a little bit of talking about things we can look for in those around us that the stress of the holidays may show some signs. And they not necessarily may mean that someone is thinking about suicide, but we have to have that kind of in the back of our mind that that's a possibility, because we never want to assume that it's not a possibility. We don't know what goes on, what things people might be carrying around with them. And so we always want to make sure people are safe. So let's first, I want to start with some of these statistics. These are from the CDC. You have probably seen these and you know what the numbers look like. This is across all age ranges. 50,000 in 2023. The numbers for 24 have not yet been released. A few did you knows about those numbers. It is the second leading cause of death for our 10-year-olds through 34. That was just recently released 6 months ago, that the number now is not 15 as it used to be, but 10. So think about our fourth and fifth graders, all the way through our young professionals and young families. So we need to be especially aware of these age ranges. Again, we're focusing on the holidays, but kind of at all times. Stress, they have less coping skills maybe to deal with the stressors of the day. They often put a lot of pressure on themselves, so we have to be paying attention. What isn't mentioned in this graph is our other end of the spectrum, our senior adults. Also especially during the holidays, can be even more prone to the loneliness and the isolation, that colder weather, inability to get out, maybe financial strains. They feel like they can't be part of family gatherings because they can't afford to get there, whatever that might be. So we're going to be paying attention to our senior adults as well. And you see some other things on here. 100 to 200 attempts for every death by suicide. That just gets us thinking that there are a lot of people who struggle in silence. We know that mental health really is that silent illness. It often is not manifested in big ways physically. So we have to be looking for those subtle clues. And just mentioned now some of these populations, men over 75, who, especially if they've lost a spouse, the holiday seasons can be especially difficult. Again, maybe not having those communities to connect with. And of course, all the time we know about our veterans, our LGBTQ population, those in rural areas. Being isolated is almost the number one factor that people can get depressed. Because the connection, we're human beings and we want connections. And during the holidays, we see all those great commercials on TV where the people are connecting with their loved ones across all these great distances, and it can get us feeling very melancholy. Okay, so why do I bring this up? Well, I bring this up because every single one of us can save a life. We know this. We know that our simple conversations can really make a difference. And if we're going to be in bigger gatherings this year, or during the holiday seasons than we typically are, it's an opportunity to check in with people that we may not normally see, just to really see how they're doing. And when I say check in with people, the key here is to actually listen to the answer. We all do the comfortable chit chat, right? How are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Where do you do for work? Oh, I do this. But to really listen to someone and give them an opportunity to give us a little bit more details, a little bit more in depth, and to learn to ask those probing questions. So I'm just going to go through these, a couple of true or false, and will know these, and I won't spend a lot of time with them. But no one can stop a suicide. It is inevitable. We know that that is not true. The fact is, people in a crisis, if they get the help they need, they may never be suicidal again. We know that, for lack of a better word, the actual attempt at suicide tends to be more spontaneous. Someone may think about it for a really long period of time, but the actual action is typically very short period of time. They like, okay, now's the, if something happens, triggers it, I'm doing it today, right now. And it tends to be more of a spontaneous thing. So if we can jump in there, we can make a pause in there, and often that suicidal attempt won't happen. Asking a person about them will increase the risk. We know this is not a fact. This is false. The fact is, when we do ask questions and ask them directly, people often open up. They really do want to talk about it, but they're afraid, about what people might judge. And so, how do we ask without the judgment? Only experts can prevent suicide. We know that it is everybody's business. Again, the more helpfully nosy, we like to call it, that we are with our friends and families, neighbors, and coworkers, the more opportunities we give people to share with us, and therefore kind of let a little bit of that stress off, if you will. Sometimes often people can figure out the answers to their own problems if we just listen, and let them talk it out. And so we need to be the person who will open up that conversation. People considering suicide keep their plans to themselves. We know that that's also false, but they're often subtle. So we have to be paying a little more attention and be open to the possibility that they could be thinking about suicide. Those who talk about it don't do it. I like to mention this one because, oftentimes with our young people, we can kind of brush them off as being dramatic or just joking. We never want to assume that anybody who talks about life or death is being dramatic or joking. We always want to dig a little deeper and find out why they might have said what they said. And then last here of these true and false, once a person decides to complete suicide, there's nothing we can do. And that again is false. We know that we can put a stop in there by simply asking some good questions and giving them time to pause. And I hope that you notice throughout these questions a little bit of change in the language. I just like to point that out. When we talk about suicide, we don't talk about it being successful. We talk about it being a completed suicide. Someone completed suicide or died by suicide, but they didn't commit it, because it's not a negative or positive action, it's just an action, right? And commit tends to be a negative word. We commit a crime, those kinds of things. So we talk about it being a death by suicide, or someone has killed themselves, or they've completed suicide. Just a side note, from some new language that has come out from the American Federation of Suicide Prevention. So let's take a look at what some of those clues and signs might be that we might see in family members, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and how we might ask some questions. So here are some of those kind of direct and indirect language, and I'm just going to point out a couple of them for you. I like to point out, if such and such does not happen, I'll kill myself. We often hear this from our teenagers. I work with teenagers for over 25 years, and they are still searching for their identity, and they tend to attach themselves to their accomplishments. And so, if such and such does not happen, I'll kill myself. So, if they don't get into a school or they didn't make the team or those kinds of things, we need to be careful when we're asking those questions about our teenagers. Oh, so what schools did you get into? Um, maybe we need to try to find a different way to address that so that it maybe doesn't sound so like, oh, you didn't get into a school, right? We don't want to ever have to say that. But just be conscientious of that conversation and that they attach themselves to those accomplishments. And then for some of our elderly people, my family would be better off without me, right? Thinking maybe that they're a burden, or pretty soon you won't have to worry about me. Why won't I worry about you? Where are you going? What's happening, right? Kind of picking up on some of those clues. Behaviors, we'll see a lot of these behaviors, and they don't necessarily mean the person is suicidal, but it certainly means that they're struggling, and we still have to ask some questions so that we can find out what's going on and how we can assist them to get to support. So we might see them putting their affairs in order. We might see them giving away prized possessions. We might see unexplained anger and aggression. We might see lots of physical things, changes in their appearance, changes in their sleeping habits, changing in their eating habits. Maybe they are sudden interest or disinterest in religion, depending on where they were to start with. So we might see some of these things. And again, they might be pointing to suicide. They may not be, but we do have to ask to find out for sure so that we can get people to the proper support, because certainly something is going on. And then the big one, of course, is isolation. When our folks aren't gathering with us, it's the holidays. People like to get out and see people and do things, and then they're not. We certainly need to be paying attention, checking in on them. Maybe it's something simple, maybe it's not, but we need to make sure we're checking in to to find out. And then lastly, in our categories here, situations, we know that life throws us all kinds of curveballs, and our society right now is difficult. Living is difficult right now. There's lots of things bombarding us, from personal things within our own family to things going on in the wider community. So things are not easy. And so we know that people are struggling with lots of things that go on, and whether you just pile one, maybe two things on top of each other, and it can be difficult to manage them. So we have to be paying attention. So any kind of loss, any kind of relationship issues, any kind of big transitions in people's lives, I point these out for our teenagers, getting ready to do whatever they might do after high school. All they've known their whole life is going to school. Now, what do I have to do? Our young families who have young children, all of that is brand new. And how do I manage? We have, a first kid, two kids, whatever it might be. How do I manage that? That's a transition time. Our military, who are constantly in transition. Our older folks who are transitioning from being working to retired. Sometimes that, as much as we think retirement is super exciting and that's exactly what I want to do when I grow up, right? It can be a hard transition for some who their whole life has been identified by what they do, and that's taken away in retirement, and they may think twice about, oh my goodness, maybe I didn't want to retire, right? So these transition times in our lives, and you throw them on top of the stress of everyday life, and now we're throwing ourselves into the holidays, it can become kind of a pile that they have difficulty managing. Okay, and so when we talk about seeing some of these signs, it doesn't have to be a lot. It could just be a feeling that somebody is not themselves. It's okay to be direct and to ask questions because you care. But we have to make sure we try to do it in a non-judgmental way. So we want to talk openly to people, but the best way to do that is to start with what we've noticed. When we do that, we are not making any judgment about what they might be thinking of or what they might be going through. We're just telling them that we've noticed. And oftentimes, that's all it takes. We're all humans, and I think more than anything, when we're hurting, we want somebody to notice we're hurting. And mental health, struggles of everyday life, whatever you want to call it, all that stress tends to be invisible and it's not seen. So when somebody says to you, "Hey, I've noticed that you don't seem to be quite yourself. You seem to be, maybe there's a lot going on. I heard about such and such. Um, I'm here, right? How can I help? What's up? Let talk to me, right? It shows them how much you care and that you noticed. So you don't need to have, and you certainly don't have to have any answers because you're not solving their problems. You're just giving them an opportunity to talk, and you're going to listen. That's really the key to it. So start with what I've noticed. I've noticed that I haven't seen you around, and you usually, I don't know, put up your Christmas tree by this time, whatever it is, right? And I haven't seen it yet. What's going on? What's up? Right? And just giving that open-ended, what's up? Tell me what's going on. And giving them an opportunity to talk. And as you have that conversation, you might get the sense that you need to ask that next question that is very direct. And I know it's direct. And people say to me, I don't know if I can be that direct. But I will say this to you. If you ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? If you have any inkling that somebody might be thinking about it, you have to ask that question. And why do we ask that question first? We ask that question first because, first and foremost, we want to keep that person safe. So if you have any thought that they might be harming themselves or thinking about harming themselves by an act of suicide, we want to take that question first. And then we come back down the ladder and help them with the rest of the things that might be going on in their lives. So that's why we ask that question first, because we want to make sure that if it's about life and death, we take care of that first, keep that person safe, and then we come back to the other things that are going on. So here's just a couple of things to point out about if you ask that question, are you thinking about suicide? If it's a no, you're going to get a very direct no. But you still have things to do. You certainly have seen something. And so just give them an opportunity to talk and let them know that you're there to listen. There are resources around if they need them. Maybe can already have a therapist. Maybe they're connected to a religious organization. Oftentimes those leaders have counseling experience. So you can encourage them to go talk to that religious leader. 988 has really stepped up its game in the last 2 years and is definitely a place for people who can call. And there are many other resources in our local area. We've got many listed on our website. I know that in our area, there are now 3 urgent cares that just do mental health evaluations. So you can go in and talk to somebody and not have to go to the ER. We never recommend that unless it's a physical condition. But you can go and talk to somebody at a mental health urgent care. So there are a lot of resources that we can, and we're all good at Google, right? So we can just Google those things, and certainly we can call 988 and they'll help us get connected to resources in our area as well. So even if they say no, we want to encourage them. And we also want to keep checking in. If in a week or so we don't see any changes to their behavior, we want to check in again and just make sure that they're still okay. Hey, I've noticed things don't seem to have gotten much better. How can I help? What's going on? And when I say, how can I help? I just want to point out that we've got to get a little better with helping folks who might be struggling with some mental health or just struggling with the stress of every day. by offering to do the things we always offer to do when someone has a physical ailment. No matter what was going on with somebody, they could have a head cold or have broken their leg. My mother was awesome at getting a casserole on their porch before the day was out. And we're just really good at that with physical health. We need to get a little better with that at mental health as well. Can I go to the doctor's, go to the grocery store for you? Can I pick you up some food? Can I bring something over? Remember that if someone is struggling with their mental health and they're in a place of really low energy, those things are really hard to get done. Just think about when you have a head cold, right? Or the flu, how much you don't want to get out of bed and you just hope somebody will remember to bring you a cup of tea and some chicken noodle soup, right? So we want to think of mental health in that same place. And then, of course, if someone says yes, we certainly need to follow the steps. We're going to listen, but we do want to connect them to someone with more support. And I'm not going to go through all the details because a referral is different for every person, but just know that you need to keep them safe. Try and connect them to another physical person with more mental health training. And we have these trainings and more in depth. So if you ever want to do one of those certifications, please get in touch. We do them online as well. That gives you more details about how to do these referrals if someone says yes. But the key again to all of this is really listening and giving people an opportunity to just talk. And during the holidays, it might just be the stress of trying to get everything accomplished, and they just need somebody to let them vent, yell, scream, holler for 5 or 10, 15 minutes, and then they'll feel better, right? But when we offer that and say, hey, I've noticed that you seem to be really on edge. What's going on? We open up the conversation and allow them to do that. Okay, so think about what's your favorite part of the holidays. Um, and then think about what stresses you out about the holidays. And I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes giving you some pointers, some tips from how you might be able to manage the stressor parts of the holidays. And I will say that I love the holidays. And I've gotten so much better as I've gotten older because I used to let it really stress me out. And I used to have to like really have everything perfect. And now I know it doesn't have to be, right? But we can get in that place where every present has to be wrapped perfectly, every Christmas card, all of those things. So how do we avoid burnout during the holidays? Pace yourself, right? Make sure you're sticking to your routine as much as possible. Do not burn that midnight oil. I have grown children, and I was just having that conversation with my 28-year-old son who is burning that midnight oil because he's got some projects at work. And I said, you cannot function on 4 and 5 hours of sleep. This is not college. But adult children only listen so much. So hopefully he's getting to the end of these projects that are due. But stick as much to your routine as possible. I read something recently, and it has stuck with me. It wasn't recently, but I read something about sleep not too long ago, and it stuck with me. It said that even if you have the day off, you should never deviate from your sleep schedule much more than an hour one way or the other. And I thought, you know what, you're right. How many times as young people or college students, we had no sleep patterns, right? And it was difficult. But if you are a person who has to get up early for work, but then you sleep in 3 or 4 hours on the weekend, that Monday comes around and it's really hard to get yourself back into that early morning wake up call. So work on that sleep pattern. Try to keep those routines as much as possible. I know the eating routines can get very complicated when you're doing holidays. It is the one thing that drives my husband absolutely crazy when we have a dinner at 3 o'clock. He's like, it's not lunch and it's not supper. What am I supposed to do at 3 o'clock, right? Because he's very much a routine person, eats lunch at noon or 12:30 and likes his dinner at 6, not much later than 6:30, but that 3 o'clock makes him crazy. So again, that routine. Get lots of water, right? We've got to get lots of water and try to get outside and get a little fresh air, even if it's just walk around your house. That will help recharge your brain. Remember we talked about that, looked at that depressed brain. Well, that's those synapses in your brain. And when they don't fire properly, they can really wear us down. But the fresh air will reset our brain. Anything that we do that stops us from the stress, takes us away for that, even for a silly minute, dancing around your house or putting on your favorite Christmas song, can help reset your brain. So think about that. But fresh air is really good for us. And then holiday self-care, some things to help you with your own self-care. Talk about boundaries with your family and friends if it's appropriate. Maybe your holiday schedule is that you have all these gatherings that people are expecting you at. Maybe you have to set up the boundaries that I can only do one in a weekend. I can't do both, right? So whatever the boundaries are, but try to set up some boundaries for yourself that help you be the best person at those gatherings that you can be, because when you're tired, you're going to be grumpy too, right? And it's not going to be a good experience for anyone. Um, Remind yourself that your identity and experiences are valid even when no one else does. So, those backhanded comments from Aunt Sue, we can walk away from them. It's okay to say thank you, Aunt Sue, and walk away. We have to be civil, but we don't have to stand and have conversations with people who make us anxious, or who are just not in do not put us in a good place. Take time for yourself, journaling, whatever it is. I love to listen to Christmas music. I've already started, drives my husband crazy, but that's okay. I have my own room that I like to turn it up really loud when he's not home. Do whatever it does to help you, to get a little downtime, whatever that might be. Maybe you need silence, and sitting, so that you are able to just breathe in a little fresh air. Maybe just open the window a little bit, sit on your couch for 10 or 15 minutes and have some silence. Maybe you're one of those people. Spend time with family that make you happy. Again, we have to be civil, but we don't have to stay in for long periods of time in the presence of people who don't make us the better version of ourselves, right? Decompress after gatherings, especially if you're one of those introverts who needs that. Keep those hotline numbers handy. Even yourself, maybe you might need 988 to talk to somebody, or maybe you have a bestie that you can call when you've gotten done having that conversation with Aunt Sue, and you can just say, "Hi, I can't believe she said these things to me," and it'll make you feel better. I know it sounds really simple, but these things really can help. And then create an exit strategy. If you are going to a place that tends to make you anxious, I have to go to this holiday office party. I don't know. Maybe that makes you anxious. Create an exit strategy. I'm going to stay this long, and then I will leave, or I will stay. And if I get into a conversation with this person, somebody's going to come over and pull me into another one, or I'm going to come up with, oh, I need to use the restroom, right? Whatever it is, so that you can pull yourself away from those places that do not make you the best version of yourself. And then last but not least, a few more helpful hints. Find that one person that you can have a conversation with. You don't have to, again, hang around people who don't make you the best version of yourself. If you have to have a conversation with someone who doesn't understand you, you don't have to you don't have to try to make them believe what you believe or understand you. You can simply state it, and then whatever they say to you, can simply be kind. Thank you very much. It was great talking with you. Yes, yes, those nods and a smile may be all you need to do. And choose your battles. Sometimes silence is golden. Um, we all maybe know that one relative who, no matter how we say it, what we do, they aren't going to believe me, understand me, or know what I do. Um, as you know, I'm a prevention person and I work in suicide prevention, and there are some members of my family who have no idea what that means. So I just now my answer to that, what do you do for a living, is I'm an education consultant. They kind of understand that. It's kind of basically what I do, education. And it's easier than trying to explain in lots of details and they don't understand. So it's okay to just have your one little liner when you maybe have something that people don't understand, or an elderly person who is unsure of what you're trying to say to them, right? So feel free to choose your battles, have your conversations, and you're not necessarily lying to them, but maybe you just don't give them all of the details. You give them a little brief elevator speech, if you will. All right. And then I'm just going to end with this slide. Remember, 988 is always there for you. You don't have to be in a suicidal crisis to call them. You can just be having an ugly day and need somebody to talk to, and they're there for you. If you are someone who is yourself or someone you know is in a crisis, they're there and they can send people to you. They now have the ability to send mental health response teams in most of our states. So that's a great resource to send mental health professionals to your location so that someone can have a conversation with someone who has more training. So do keep all of that in mind, and of course, any of your local resources. So I will, that's it for my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop share. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. And hopefully that gave you a little food for thought, maybe a little smile on your face as well, as we all are in the midst of the holiday season here, or Turkey Day in just a week, and the Christmas right behind it.
Yes. And then it's going to be the new year.
Yes, it will be.
But thank you so much for sharing. That was an awesome presentation. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to come off mute. Um, I will say that I was taking some notes for myself. I think my biggest takeaway was, even though some things seem simple, they're very necessary. Like listening seems like something very simple, but you can catch those cues from family members who might need some help. Um, yeah. Did anybody else have any questions or comments for Miss Amy while we have her?
No, but thank you for that presentation. I didn't know about 988, but I'll use that for my clients too.
Good, and thank
Awesome.
you. And
Awesome. And
thank
I,
you to whoever was giving me all of the emojis. I appreciated that.
That's me. I like to interact.
Thank you. I appreciated that. I was like, oh, I get it. They're listening. So thank you.
yes, thank you for that. We got another thank you in the chat for sharing this helpful information for navigating this holiday season. Yes, thank you so much, Miss Amy. I know you mentioned some links during your presentation. I would love to share in the follow-up email. Also, if you're able to share your presentation, I can include that as well in the follow-up email to everyone.
Yes, I can
And
share my presentation, and I'm putting in the chat right now our website, so feel free to go there as well. And we have a resource page on our website at the top. If you click on resources, right there, there's all many resources that are available in Hampton Roads. We don't recommend any one place because any place is different for every person who experiences it, but we do want to try to get out there as many places that are available. And right on that front page is those urgent cares that are now available to folks. So, and I will, once I get off of this, I'll send you that link right away, Jasmine, so you have it
Awesome.
tomorrow or Monday when you send out your email.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'll be sure to add that link as well. But yeah, we can go ahead and wrap up. Miss Amy, thank you again so much for your time and
You are
sharing
welcome, and
with
thank you
us.
again for the opportunity. And I'll go ahead and pop off so you guys can finish up your meeting, and I'll send you that link.
All right, and I'm just going to finish up with one last slide, thanking everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you for your time. We would love to hear your responses on these calls and maybe some references or any topics that you want to hear about in the future. You can fill that out on this survey. This will also be up on the follow-up email if you're not able to scan this QR code now. But thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening and have a wonderful holiday as well.